Hello, welcome to my kitchen here at Trails Inn 62. This is part 2 of making tamales, and today we're going to be doing the col, and I decided to break these up into different videos so that they'd be easier to digest, if you will. So this is going to be part 2, and this is going to be about the col. That's the sauce. It's not actually the col itself, it's just the col sauce, which is then when you make tamales you have to add the maseca to that, the corn flour to that to make the col itself. But we'll be doing the sauce, and I'll be canning those up in half pints, and so this is part 2 of making tamales. I don't know if there's going to be 3 or 4. It kind of depends on how the making part goes. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, we're ready to do the col, C-O-L, that's how that's spelled. This is the sauce on the inside of the tamale. Now we're going to be mixing this up, and it's going to be kind of liquefied, and then when you actually use it, we'll be mixing it with maseca, which is a real fine corn flour, and that will be the thickener that we will use for the col when we put it on the tamale. But first we're going to can the sauce and not mix it with the maseca, the corn flour, because I don't do that in my canning. Some people do. It's a thickener. I don't add it during the canning process because it makes in my opinion, some people use it, like I said, some people do, but in my opinion it makes it too dense to can properly. So I will add that afterwards. But to do the sauce, the first thing we're going to need is tomatoes, peppers, and onions. Now, I have some tomatoes from my garden. These are Roma tomatoes. They were frozen. Okay, you can use fresh tomatoes. Roma tomatoes are the best because they have less liquid in them. But any tomato will work, but the more watery tomato you use, the more tomato you're actually going to have. The recipe actually calls, and this is for about 16 tamales, more or less. We're going to fine tune that as we do this. But for this particular recipe, we're going to do it for a little more, maybe double that. So we're starting out with 4 large Roma tomatoes, like what you'd buy at the grocery store. That'll be the large Roma tomatoes, which will make about 4 cups of tomatoes. Okay, of diced tomatoes. That's what I have here, about 4 cups of diced tomatoes. Okay, so if you're following the recipe, it's either 4 large Roma tomatoes or 4 cups of diced tomatoes. And then we're going to have green peppers, and again, I had frozen. These are some of my frozen green peppers that I took out of the freezer, and they've already been diced. And you will be using 2 of those large green peppers, like what you buy in the grocery store. They're really big, you know, or about 3 cups of diced green peppers. Now all this is going to be chopped up fine. Okay, so it does, whether you want to slice it or whether you want to dice it or however you want to do it. I happen to have diced, and then this is all going to be chopped up to kind of a liquid as much as possible. Next we're going to have onions. Alright, takes 2 medium onions. Alright, got 2 large peppers, 2 medium onions, which is going to be about 2 cups of diced onions. Alright, but 2 medium onions. And you're going to take your onions and your peppers and your tomatoes, and you're going to saute them just very briefly, just for a few minutes. I'll show you. I'm going to do the peppers and the onions first because they've been in the freezer. They've got more water in them, so we're going to do those first so we get some of that water out before we add the tomatoes, because you don't saute it for very long. It's just enough to get it sauteed just a little. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the onions. Now I'm doing my onions first because they are a bit watery because they came out of the freezer. But if you're fresh onions, they won't be quite so watery. You can put all this in at the same time. But you're just going to put it in. You're going to saute it. The pan is hot. It's got some oil in there, which is fine. Not a lot of oil, but just a little bit, because we're going to saute this and let it cook. We're going to do our onions and peppers first. You put it all in at once if you're using fresh vegetables. But we'll do our onions and peppers first. And get some of that water out of them from the freezer. Alright, since mine came from the freezer, then I heated it up and then drained the excess water off of it, because we don't want the water in it, but we do want to liquefy this. Next we're going to put in the tomatoes, and then, like I said, it doesn't take long. You don't want to overcook your tomatoes, because that will break them down. So we're just going to put it in here, heat it up. So we just want to saute it till everything gets good and warm and hot. You want the heat coming through. You can see it coming, bubbling up. That's what you want. This is taking a little longer than what you would probably have to do with fresh vegetables, because these were all frozen. So, but you want it to be thoroughly heated, but you don't want to overcook it, but you want it to be thoroughly heated. So it'll take a minute, a couple minutes, however long it takes for you to saute this to get it to where it's heated thoroughly through everything. Heating it up helps soften the vegetables for when you liquefy it in the blender. It helps soften it up so it'll liquefy better. And then once it's heated enough, you turn off your heat and let it set and let it cool for a bit. Okay, next we're going to blend this up. We're going to be using 2 sprigs of cilantro. And we'll be using however much habanero that you want. Normally maybe 2 or 3 habaneros in there. Depends on how spicy you want it. Again, I've got some frozen habanero because I grew it, and that's, so I'm going to just put that in. But you put that in. If you don't want any habanero, don't put it in. You won't get the flavor, but don't put it in. And then you would put all this into a blender to blend it all up real fine, or a what do you call that, a NutriBullet or something like that. But all I don't even have a blender, I'm sorry, but all I've got is this little Big Boss thing that just does this right here. So we're going to have to do part of it at a time. We'll put some of the cilantro in, then we'll put some of the habanero in, and some of our sauteed vegetables here, and then we'll puree that up, and then we'll do the rest of it till we get it all pureed up. And then we're going to be adding some more ingredients as soon as we get this done. So we're going to put in some habanero. We got some everything else put in there. And basically what we're doing is we're making a liquid out of this, and once we add the Maseca at the end, after when we get ready to cook it, that will make it into kind of a paste. This will be more of a liquid, and this is what we're going to can, and then that will make it kind of a paste. We're going to put a little bit more liquid in this in just a minute. Okay, here it is all pureed up, and that's still a little thick, but we've got to add some more stuff to it. And what we're adding, now I've got some 2 cups of water here, and of course this is the rest of the drippings from the pan that I cooked the vegetables, sauteed the vegetables in. I poured it in here and added water to make 2 cups. And with that I'm going to be adding 2 chicken bouillon cubes. Now these are Knorr chicken bouillon cubes, and these are bigger than just your regular cubes. They are 11 to 12 grams each, so they're bigger than the regular ones. And then in addition to 2 of those, we're going to be adding some annatto, a condiment paste. This is like what we put in the meat, but this is a more of a solid. And we use an equivalent amount of this as we have bouillon cubes. So I've got 2 of these, so this will equal 2 of those. I cut it to make 2 of those, and that comes in a cube, and it's soft. We're going to add this to the water and mix this and mix the bouillon cubes in there. Then we're going to add that to our sauce. And this is warm water, so it'll dissolve better. We want to add this in here and see how it's turning darker in the color. That's the annatto paste. We'll crunch these up, add them in here, stir this up till it gets good and dissolved. And then we're going to be adding 4 teaspoons, going to be adding 4 teaspoons of cumin. And we're just going to add this in here because we're going to stick this back in our mixer and make sure it gets mixed up really good. Because that paste is a little hard to mix up, and we want to make sure it gets all mixed up really good. So we're going to run it back through our little Big Boss mixer, or you could put it in your blender or whatever you're using. Alright, we got all that blended up, and now we're going to pour it in with the rest of our sauce. Stir it up real good here. Get it all mixed up. Now I want to say something about this annatto that we use. This is not a tomato paste. This is an actual plant, and the seeds of it are ground up to make this. So don't misunderstand that this is a tomato paste, because it is not. It is an annatto paste. Now the consistency of this is kind of the thickness of a nice tomato sauce, pasta sauce. And that's the thickness that you want here, because any thicker it won't can quite as good. And once we make the paste for the tamales, we will be using, as I said, we'll be using the corn Maseca flour, and that will act as a thickening agent as you heat it up and mix it in. Then it will thicken this up to a thicker paste to put on our tamales. Alright, so that's what we have now, and we're going to get ready now to put this in our jars and can it up. Now my cold sauce is all ready to go. I'm going to can it up in half-pint jars. This is all basically an experimental stage here, because as far as I can find, tamales have never been put together this way. So I'm going to can these in half-pint jars, and we'll see how much that does once we add the Maseca to thicken it up and see how many tamales that does. But the other thing is, I'm going to can this just like it was salsa. Now I pressure can my salsa for it to last longer. It can be water bath, and I have water bath some, or use my low pressure on my Nesco electric canner. But I'm going to just pressure can it, regular pressure can it, just to be safe on it for how long I want it to last and what all I've got in it. It's not exactly salsa. There's no lime juice in it. There's no vinegar in it. Of course, I don't use vinegar in my salsa. I do use lemon or lime juice for the extra acidity, but there is none of that in this, and that's why I'm going to high pressure can it rather than water bath type. Add salt. Now when I put all my cold sauce in the measuring cup, it was just shy of 2 quarts. So I add a little bit of extra chicken broth to bring it up to 2 quarts. It didn't take much, maybe 1/4 of a cup. But so that I have 2 quarts of cold sauce. And it'll do 8 or 9 half pints. We'll see what it comes out to. But we'll start out. I shouldn't do more than 9, but I've got 9 out here to start with. But I'm going to put a 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt in each one. Normally you would add salt to the mixture, but this way I've distributed between the half pints. And if you need more salt as you're mixing it up with the Maseca, you can always add some extra salt then. I did get 9 half pints. Pretty much used it all. There's a little dab left, but not enough to worry about. So I'm getting 9 half pints out of this recipe. And if you have a 1/4 pint or something like that, you may have enough to do a 1/4 pint if you wanted to do that. I don't, so I won't. So I'll be doing 9 half pints. And I'll go ahead and seal these up, wipe them off with vinegar, seal them with my caps and lids, finger tight again, and put them in my pressure canner. Okay, and we have 9 half pints of cold sauce to make our tamales. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm going to show you how we'll use the tamale meat and the tamale cold sauce to make homemade tamales. Quicker and easier than if you had to do all of this in a single day to make tamales. And that's it. The cold sauce for the Yucatec Mayan Tamales. And then the next video we'll tell you how to combine the cold sauce and how to make it to put it on the tamales, how to put the tamales together and that sort of thing. A little different than just the canning part, but basically this is just the canning the 2 parts, and that makes it a lot quicker and easier when you want to make tamales. And I'm all about quick and easy. So that's it till next time. From my house to your house, from my kitchen to your kitchen. God bless.